Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Can you hear my voice clearly? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So
Yes, sir.
Gigi, it's okay. Now, today, today is our first online lecture, and the topic is doses. Today we are discussing the topic of doses. Now, before starting the topic of doses, we should know that what is the normal anatomy of eyelid. Now, as we all know that eyelid is the window of the eye. Whatever enters the eye, it has to pass through the two eyelids, the upper eyelid and the lower eyelid. So the protective function of eyelids is dominating, and it prevents any hazardous objects to reach to the eyeball. So I hope that you all know about the normal anatomy of the eyelids that I have been taught in the third year. The outermost layer of the eyelid is the cutaneous layer, that is the skin. Then on number two, deep to it is the subcutaneous layer. Further deeper to it is the muscular layer. Then is the tarsal plate layer, and finally the deepermost is the conjunctiva.
Sir, थोड़ा सा loudly बोल दें please. We can't hear you properly.
Okay. Okay, so I was just telling you about the different layers of the eyelid, and we have covered the cutaneous layer, the subcutaneous layer, the muscular layer, and then the tarsal plate layer, and the innermost is the conjunctival layer. If we broadly distribute this eyelid into two different portions, we can divide it into anterior lamella and the posterior lamella. This is actually just to have an idea about the landmarks of the surgical eyelid. We call it surgical eyelid because whenever we are going to do any surgery on the eyelid, we should know the normal landmark of the anterior lamellae and the posterior lamellae. Now here is a schematic diagram which is showing you what are the structures that exist in the anterior lamellae and what are the structures that exist in the posterior lamellae. Now this is the central gray line. If you can see on your screen, this is the gray line which is dividing the whole eyelid into two lamellae, the anterior lamellae and the posterior lamellae. This is the demarcating line, the gray line. Now the anterior lamellae consists of the cutaneous layer, the subcutaneous layer and the muscular layer, while the posterior lamellae consists of the tarsal plate layer and the conjunctival layer. Okay. Here is also another schematic diagram of the eyelid, which is showing you some of the structures that are present in the inner and outer margin of the eyelids. The outer part of the eyelid is called the outer canthus. The inner part of the eyelids is called the inner canthus. You can also call it medial canthus. And the outer canthus is actually the lateral canthus. Then there is a fold of skin that is present on the medial side near the medial canthus, which is called plica semillunaris. Plica semillunaris. Now, what are the supplies of the eyelids? The supplies means the blood supply, nerve supply, and the lymphatic drainage. The blood supply of the eyelids is from the ophthalmic arteries and the lacrimal arteries, which are drained by the same veins. The nerve supply, sensory nerve supply to the eyelids is trigeminal nerve, the fifth nerve. This is clinically important because when we will discuss about the herpes zoster ophthalmicus, we will see that it is actually the fifth nerve which is involved. So that is why you have to remember that fifth nerve is actually the sensory supply of the eyelid. It's not the motor supply. The motor supply means that the nerves we supply the muscles of the eyelids. So the muscle that closes the eyelid is the orbicularis, and it is being supplied by the facial nerve, while the muscle that opens the eyelid is the levator palpebris superioris, and that is being supplied by the third nerve. The third nerve supplies the levator palpebris superioris. And then we have a Muller muscle, which is also the muscle that opens the eyelid. So conjugately, there are two muscles that open the eyelid. One is the levator palpebris superioris, and other is the Muller muscle. Levator is supplied by the oculomotor, and Muller muscle is being supplied by the sympathetic plexus. So these are the two muscles which open the eye. The one that closes is orbicularis, which is supplied by the facial nerve. Again, clinically, it has importance because whenever there is facial nerve palsy, the patient will not be able to close the eyelid because the muscle which closes has been paralyzed. Similarly, whenever a patient is having third nerve palsy, the patient will not be able to open the eyelid because the muscle that opens the eyelid has been paralyzed. When the eyelid is unable to open, the eyelid will droop. We call it droop. Droop means it will fall. The upper eyelid will fall. The lower eyelid cannot fall, but the upper eyelid will fall, and this will create a condition which is called ptosis. That is our today's topic. So that is why we just wanted to have a background of the normal anatomy of the eyelids so that you can have an idea about the different pathophysiology of the ptosis. The lymphatic drainage, the lymphatic drainage to the eyelids is through the preauricular lymph nodes and the submaxillary lymph nodes. These are the lymph nodes that are present on the face, the preauricular just in front of the ear, and the submaxillary lymph nodes are present in the maxillary region. Now, again, the clinical importance lies because whenever a patient is having inflammation in the conjunctiva, for example, if a patient is having adenoviral conjunctivitis, then the lymphatic supply, major most lymphatic supply from there also goes to the preauricular lymph nodes, and therefore there will be a enlargement, painful enlargement of the preauricular lymph node. Similarly, if we are talking about the eyelids, if there is any tumor in the eyelids, it will spread to the preauricular lymph nodes. So there will be swelling of the preauricular lymph nodes. That is why when we are doing examination of the eyelids, we should always and always palpate the preauricular lymph nodes so that we can get an idea about the lymphatic drainage and the tumorous state of the eyelids. If we have a suspicious growth on the eyelids, we have to palpate the preauricular lymph node. Now, what are the functions of the eyelid? I already told you the main function of the eyelid is to reflexly close the eyelid whenever any hazardous object is coming towards the eyelids. Now, whatever be the nature of the hazardous object, it might be a foreign body, it might be an intense light ray, it might be uh, any visible harmful radiation. Similarly, any object that is coming toward the eye, even a very fast blow of air is also hazardous to the eye, and one has to close the eyelids Similarly, there is another reflexive closure of the eyelids, which is called the visual threat. Whenever a person have a visual threat, he closes the eyelid. Okay, now this is the main function of the eyelid. The second function is lubrication. The eyelids, these actually, whenever they close, they spread and they distribute the layer of the tear film over the conjunctiva and the cornea. It is very necessary because whenever the eyelids are closed and then they are open for instance, say 12 times a minute. The normal blinking rate is 12 per minute. So whenever a person opens and closes the eyelids, the tear film distributes over the cornea and conjunctiva, which prevent it from getting dry. So it is very important for the eye to get wet every second, so that dry eye is always a problem for a person. Whenever a person is having dry eye due to infrequent blinking, he will have frequent number of infections. So there are more chances of infections whenever blinking is reduced. It's very important. Um, the closure of eyelid, as I already told you, is by the help of the orbicularis oculi, and the opening of the eyelid is mainly by the levator and a little bit by the Muller muscle. Now, this was a little bit basic idea about the normal anatomy of the eye, and let's come to the main topic, today's main topic, which is ptosis. Now, let's discuss about the definition of the ptosis. Can you see the slide? Hello?
No, no, sir.
Yes, sir.
The
Yes,
No.
sir.
still
Yes, sir.
physiology of eyelid is being shown. Not
Okay.
इसको खोलना है ना
F5.
ठीक है और ये पहले इसको इधर स्टॉप लिखा होता है उसको पास करोगे तो आपकी रिकॉर्डिंग नहीं फिर उसको रिज्यूम कर दो
सही
यही है या दूसरा
नहीं
जो
ये नहीं, दूसरा
स्टैंस की आवाज आ रही है क्या
नहीं, अभी नहीं।
कौन सी है ये वाला
ये ओपन करनी है, क्लोज करनी
ये क्लोज हो जाएगी अभी
है, ये ओपन Now, can you see the new slides?
yes, sir.
Yes,
we
sir.
can-
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now we will not go again into the repeat. We will not repeat the anatomy of the eyelids. We will directly uh, go toward the topic of today's presentation, and that is ptosis.
Okay.
Now, what is ptosis? It is an abnormally lowered position of the upper eyelid. You can call that it is the drooping of the eyelids. Okay, so drooping of the eyelids or abnormally lower position of the upper eyelid is basically associated with the upper eyelid. This abnormality has to do with the upper eyelid. If it drops, we call it ptosis. There are certain factors that can cause ptosis. The first one that has to be undertaken is the mechanical factor. Mechanical factor means that whenever there is some weight bearing object on the upper eyelid, something which will have weight and it is being put on the upper eyelid, it will bring the eyelid down. And what are those weights that can cause the upper eyelid to come down? For example, any lid lesion, a large lid lesion or swelling. Okay, then localized swelling. Then there is diffuse generalized lid edema. Okay, that can also cause drooping of the eyelid. Then there is tethering of the lid. Tethering means that the upper eyelid has been brought down because of adhesions from inner side. And what is present on the inner side of the eyelid, as I already told you, the innermost layer of the eyelid is conjunctiva. So conjunctiva is a mucous structure and it has very much tendency to get adhered to other part of the conjunctiva. So the part of the conjunctiva that is present on the eyelid is called palpebral conjunctiva. Okay? And what is present in in very close relation to it is the bulbar conjunctiva. So bulbar conjunctiva and tarsal conjunctiva or the palpebral conjunctiva, both of them face each other. Now, finally, there are structural abnormalities, including a disinsertion of the aponeurosis of the levator muscle, usually in the elderly patients. This is also one of the mechanical factors. In old age, what happens that the levator palpebris superioris, you know that it has belly part, that is the muscular part, and the other is the aponeurotic part. So, like many other muscles of the body, skeletal muscles of the body, it has a muscular part and the aponeurotic part. So that aponeurotic part, it degenerates with age, and therefore it gets separated from the insertion, and that is what causes ptosis in elderly pupils. So whenever you see very old age pupils, you will find that their upper eyelid have drooped down, and that is just and just because of the weakening or disinsertion of the levator palpebris superioris aponeurosis. Okay, so this is also one of the mechanical factors. Similarly, the first one, let's just uh, uh, come back to the first point because this is the most important. Lid lesion, large lid lesion. Let me give you one of the example. For example, if there is any calazion on the eyelid, which is a swelling, or a big style, or if there is any lid tumor, then it will cause uh, drooping of the eyelid. Any tumor on the eyelid also bears weight and it will cause drooping of the eyelids. So this all comes into the mechanical factors, then the neurological factors. So the reasons why a patient gets ptosis due to neurological factors. Number one, the nerve that supplies the muscle which opens the eyelid. As we know that in ptosis there is failure to open the eyelid. So the nerve which supplies the levator palpebris superioris, and that is the third nerve. Whenever there is third nerve palsy, it will cause ptosis. other muscle, Muller muscle, which opens the eyelid, it is being supplied by the sympathetic plexus, and whenever there is a lesion in the sympathetic plexus, like Horner syndrome, it will lead to the looping of the eyelid. Finally, there is Marcus-Gunn jaw weakening syndrome. This is actually a congenital disorder where what happens that the nerve which supplies the eyelids is anonymously, or you can say that abnormally, it is attached with the nerve that supplies the jaw muscles. What are the jaw muscles? The medial pterygoid and the lateral pterygoid. These are the muscles which open and close the jaw. So you can say the nerves which open or close the eyelids are abnormally linked to the nerve supply which supplies the muscles which open or close the jaw. Both of them are interconnected abnormally with each other. So that is why when you will examine these patients, especially these are the childs because it's a congenital disorder. So whenever they will open their mouth while eating and then close their mouth while eating, whenever they are chewing something, the eyelids will be seen to be moving. The upper eyelid, sometimes it will droop and then sometimes it will open normally. So that is actually an abnormal connection and an abnormal condition which is called Marcus-Gunn jaw winking phenomenon. The third one is the myogenic factor. Now, myogenic factor is a misnomer because it also contains the condition which is neuromyogenic, means a condition where neuromuscular junction is involved. So whenever there is a problem in the neuromuscular junction, what will happen that the message toward the muscle will not be conveyed. And you all know in pathology, you might have read about it, that myasthenia gravis is a condition where there is a problem in the relay of neuromuscular junction. Okay, there is a problem in acetylcholine receptors, and then the acetylcholine doesn't connect with it, and the message doesn't goes from the nerve to the muscle. So that will lead to myasthenia gravis. This is not purely a myogenic factor. This is a neuromyogenic factor. But we have added myasthenia gravis into the myogenic factor. Then there are pure muscular causes like muscular dystrophy, where the patient will have uh, uh, doses due to the problem with levator palpebrae superioris. The muscle is dystrophied. Okay. Then there is chronic external ophthalmoplegia. This is also a chronic condition of the that involves the muscles where they become dysfunctional. So that is a neuromuscular. Uh, that is also a muscular problem. Now, basically, these were the main cause. Uh, you can also say that this is the classification of the doses according to the etiology. This is classification of doses according to etiology, the cause, if it's a neurological cause, if it's a neuromuscular cause, if it's a myogenic cause, or if it's a mechanical cause. These are the different causes of the doses. Now, what will be the symptoms? Very clearly seen, the patient will complain that his eyelid droops. His eyelid droops, and the peoples who are connected to that person, they have uh, told him about this problem, and that uh, you know, that is being counted in the cosmetic effect. We call it as an cosmetic defect. The patient do not looks normal, and there's a disfigurement. Okay? A person with drooped lid doesn't looks to be normal, and people usually point out that what has happened to you. That's a cosmetic effect. Other symptom is that whenever the doses is severe, the drooping is severe, what will happen that the patient will not be able to visualize anything. He has to lift his face up in order to see any object. Why? the drooped or the dropped eyelid will block the normal visual axis. It will block the pupillary area. Okay? There will, you can also say that there will be a curtain in front of the cornea. There's a curtain. Okay? Then there are uh, other signs and symptoms that are associated with the underlying cause, whatever is the cause. For example, if a patient is having Horner syndrome, he will also be having problem with the sweating and the pupillary, the pupil will be constricted as sympathetic supply dilates the pupil. Instead of dilating, the pupil will constrict. Similarly, a patient might be having diplopia. This occurs especially in the muscular problems, that is the myotonic dystrophy or the chronic external ophthalmoplegia or the myasthenia gravis, where the patient will have diplopia. Okay, and also the reduced eye movements. Reduced eye movements, yes, this is also concerned with the neurological causes, because third nerve palsy not only supplies the levator palpebris superioris, but it also supplies the recti muscle, the superior rectus, the inferior rectus, the medial rectus, and the inferior oblique. These are the muscles that are also supplied by the third nerve. So whenever there is a third nerve palsy, it will not only affect the levator palpebris superioris, but it will also affect the muscles that move the eyeball. Now, what are the signs? There is basically a very clear-cut reduction in the size of the interpalpebral aperture. The interpalpebral aperture is the distance in between the upper eyelid and the lower eyelid. It is called interpalpebral aperture. Okay? So that will be reduced.
सर
Yes.
सर बैकग्राउंड जो आवाज है वो आपकी आवाज से काफी ज्यादा है और
अच्छा
हम
मैं
आपकी आवाज बिल्कुल समझ नहीं पा रहे हैं
अच्छा मैं कह देता हूँ, होल्ड कीजिए। चवनि था त असांखे तव्हां जी आवाज़ खां वधीक पोयां जो गोठ ॾाढो पियो अचे। Just hold on, we are working on it. Excuse me. Now, can you hear my voice?
Yes, sir, we
sir.
can hear your voice.
Clearly.
It's clear now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so I was talking about the interpalpebral aperture, that it is the open space in between the upper eyelid margin and the lower eyelid margin. That is called the interpalpebral aperture. Okay. Now, the upper eyelid, normally it covers the upper part of the cornea. And how much cornea is being covered normally by the upper eyelid? It is 1 to 2 millimeter. Okay. It is normally the upper eyelid covers the upper eyelid. Hello. The normal.
Yes, sir.
जी
Yes, sir.
अब मुझे बैकग्राउंड में बहुत ज्यादा शोर की आवाज आ रही है. Normally the upper eyelid covers cornea superiorly up to 1 to 2 millimeter. ठीक है, अगर आप किसी को नॉर्मल पर्सन को देखें तो आपको पता चलेगा that the upper eyelid it covers a little bit portion of the cornea. If you will look onto the lower eyelid, the margin of the lower eyelid doesn't covers the cornea. ठीक है, आप एक दूसरे को अगर एग्जामिन करेंगे तो आपको पता चलेगा कि अपर आईलिड जो है नॉर्मली it covers 1 to 2 millimeter of the cornea. Now in ptosis what happens that this area of coverage, that is 1 to 2 millimeter, increases in the width. That is, instead of 1 to 2 millimeter, the cornea will be covered by the eyelid by 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 millimeters, like that. Okay, so you have to examine that how much of the cornea is being covered by the upper eyelid margin. Then you have to check the levator function. Very important, because it is the muscle which opens the eyelid. So how can you uh, check the levator muscle function? This is called uh, upper lid excursion. This is called upper lid excursion, by which you check the uh, power of the levator muscle, the function of the levator muscle. Now, how much of the eyelid covers the cornea in the inferior gaze and the superior gaze? This is basically the point or the concept behind upper lid excursion. What you do is that just keep your thumb onto the brow of the patient and then ask the patient to look down. When he looks down, keep your zero of your scale on the margin of the upper eyelid. And then secondly, ask him to look at the superior gaze, the roof of the roof on the roof side. Ask him to look up. When he will look up, the eyelid will go into the new position. The upper eyelid will go into the new position. Now, in this new position, check out the distance from the older position up to the newer position. That is, from the zero of your scale to the new position, which will give you an area of about 15 to 18 millimeter. Okay. This will give you an area of 15 to 18 millimeter. Now, why did you had a pressure onto the brow? Why did you keep your thumb onto the brow? This is just to keep the muscle of the frontalis separated. Why? Because we know that whenever frontalis contracts, it also have an effect on levator. It will also affect the levator palpebris superioris. So we just want to cut off this effect of the frontalis from the levator, because we want to know the pure function of the levator palpebris superioris. If the person is having the distance of 15 to 18 millimeter in this upper lid excursion, then it's a normal one. If this upper lid excursion is less than that, if the upper lid excursion is less than 15 to 18 millimeter, then the levator function is reduced and the patient will be having the doses. Yes, there is, I think, a question.
Sir, the voice is not clear.
Still the voice is not clear?
Yes, it's still not.
Is it clear now? Is it clear now?
Yes,
Yes,
sir,
sir.
little bit.
A little
No,
bit.
sir.
Actually, now, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I have told you about the upper lid excursion, which measures the levator function. How do you measure it? This is very important, and sometimes the examiners in the exam ask about upper lid excursion and they ask you to do it. So practically we will teach you how to check the upper lid excursion when you will come in rotation after the the lockdown is over. Okay. Now then, if a patient is suspected to have myasthenia gravis, for myasthenia gravis, what you do? We actually, I will tell you the practical thing. What we do in the OPD, simply we ask the patient to look straight. Okay. We ask the patient to look straight ahead, and then we measure the degree of ptosis. How do we measure the degree of ptosis? The severity of drooping of the eyelid. Normally, it should cover 1 to 2 millimeter of cornea. Now we will measure how much of the cornea is covered. This will give you the severity of the ptosis. Either it might be mild, moderate, or severe. How do you measure the severity? Again, I will be telling you in the next slides. But at the moment, we should know how do we check how do we do test for the myasthenia gravis. So we ask the patient to look straight ahead, and then we again ask the patient to look up for about 5 to 10 minutes. Okay. After 5 to 10 minutes, we again measure the degree of ptosis. If the degree of ptosis has increased, for example, before the test, the patient was having mild ptosis. Okay.
सर पीछे से बहुत ज्यादा आवाज आ रही है।
असल में ये कुछ स्टूडेंट्स ने शायद वॉइस ऑन किया हुआ है, इस वजह से मुझे भी बहुत शोर आ रहा है। यहाँ कोई इतना रूम में इतना शोर नहीं है।
सर आप उसी वहीं से सेटिंग से ना सबके माइक्स ऑफ कर दें, सबको म्यूट कर दें आप।
अच्छा, ये मैं इनको कह रहा हूँ। एक्सक्यूज मी। स्टूडेंट्स कह रही हैं कि बैकग्राउंड में बहुत ज़्यादा शोर जा रहा है, तो कह रहे हैं वहाँ से इसमें से आप सबको म्यूट कर दो। ये आपको 14 डेज तक बेस चलेगा। उसके बाद ओव्यूलेशन होगी और ओव्यूलेशन के बाद न्यूट्रिएंट फेज। आप नीचे देखिए तो प्रोलिफेरेटिव फेज और न्यूट्रिएंट साइकिल में हमें 2 4 दिन 5 दिन तक ये मेंस्ट्रुअल फेज होगा और प्रोलिफेरेटिव का up to 14 डेज। जैसे बात में ओव्यूलेशन होगी तो यहाँ पे सीक्रेटरी फेज को आल्सो वी कॉल इट। ओके। So this is called fatigability test. What I told you just now, that ask the patient to look straight ahead and measure the degree of ptosis, and with your scale. We just need a small scale, and therefore when you will find out how much is the degree of the ptosis, and then ask the patient to look up for 5 to 10 minutes, and again re-measure the degree of ptosis. If you find a difference in both the readings, then the patient is suspected to have ptosis. But if the patient doesn't have any difference in the reading, you can exclude the ptosis. The other test is this was called the fatigability test. The other test is the ICE test. In ICE test, what we do is that primarily we measure the degree of ptosis, and then we will put a cube of ice onto the upper eyelid. For about 5 to 10 minutes, we keep the ice pack onto the upper eyelid and then remove it, and then again measure the degree of. Yes. Hello. Some students are, I think, pointing out any question. Okay. So let's continue. When with the eyes, by putting the eyes, the degree of ptosis reduces. It also is a clue for myasthenia gravis, because the pathophysiology behind it is that cooling effect augments the neuromuscular junction. This is the concept behind the cooling effect. Whenever ice pack is put onto the eyelid, the neuromuscular junction will increase function, and that is the place where the defect is existing in myasthenia gravis. So, a patient with myasthenia gravis, after being put ice pack onto the eyelid, will improve the eyelid function. His doses will be relieved only transiently for some time, and then after some minutes, the cooling effect, as soon as the cooling effect is gone, the patient will again get the doses. This is called the ice test. So we will go for the ice test and the fatigue test. Now, how do you manage the case of doses? We manage the case of doses by treating the underlying disease. For example, if the patient is having doses due to myasthenia gravis, you can treat the myasthenia gravis and the patient will be relieved. If the patient is having doses due to the myotonic dystrophy, just treat the myotonic dystrophy and the patient will get improvement in the doses. Why do we differ doses in small children? That is, you can also add a statement over here that doses, severe doses in children is an emergency. Severe doses in children is an emergency. This is because the severe doses will block the visual axis. The child will not be able to see, and he has not adopted to use the other senses to see that what will happen that the patient, the child will develop amblyopia. So
सर
that
आपकी
is why
आवाज बिल्कुल नहीं आ रही।
we have muted all the students from here. Still you can't hear me? Hello?
सर सब
नो
म्यूट
सर
नहीं
यू
हो
नॉट
गए अभी
हियरिंग।
तक।
अच्छा, ये आज की क्लास में इनको मैं पॉइंट आउट कर देता हूँ कि ये इसमें कुछ चेंजेस लेकर आए हैं सेटअप में, ताकि आप लोगों को मेरी आवाज़ आ सके।
और सर आपकी आवाज भी कम आ रही है।
जी जी
सर
जी जी
शायद पीछे कोई दूसरे टीचर भी लेक्चर दे रहे हैं, उनकी आवाज साथ में ज्यादा आ रही है।
एक्चुअली यहाँ एट अ टाइम इस हॉल में जो है 3 टीचर्स बैठे हैं, तो इसी वजह से
ये सर उन लोगों की जी सर उनकी शायद उनकी आवाज है।
ठीक है, तो ये मैं यहाँ के इंचार्ज को कह देता हूँ कि कोई ऐसा अरेंजमेंट करेंगे उसमें अलग अलग हो तो वो आपको डिस्टर्बेंस नहीं हो।
जी सर, थैंक यू सर।
ठीक है, नाउ okay, now can you see this picture?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Now I am can you see this pointer?
Yes, sir.
Yes sir।
Okay, now this pointer I have put it on to the upper eyelid margin of the right eye, and you can see that it is covering about 1 to 2 millimeter of the upper part of the cornea. Okay? The lower eyelid is just passing through the limbus. It's not covering the lower part of the cornea. You can clearly see this is a normal eye. Let's come to the left eye. This was the right eye, now the left eye. Now over here you can see that the upper eyelid margin, it is covering more than 1 millimeter of the cornea. You can see it's covering
Yes sir।
nearly about 4 to 5 millimeters of the cornea. So what will be the degree of ptosis over here? The degree of ptosis over here will be just subtract, for example, let's say that it is covering 5 millimeters of the cornea. The center of the upper eyelid margin, you have to take the center of the upper eyelid margin. It is covering 5 millimeters of the upper part of the cornea. Just subtract 1 millimeter from it and you will get a reading of 4 millimeter. Okay? So 4 millimeter comes into moderate type of ptosis. There is mild ptosis, there is moderate ptosis, then there is severe ptosis. Okay, the mild ptosis is the one where you get the reading after subtracting, you get the reading of about 2 to 3 millimeter. In moderate ptosis, you will get the reading of 3 to 5 millimeter, and in case of severe ptosis, you will get a reading of more than 5 millimeter, which will cover the pupillary zone, that is the severe ptosis. तो इसके लिए एक बहुत आसान निशानी ये है कि अगर आप देखें कि अपर आईलिड ने प्यूपिल को कवर किया हुआ है, just simply mark it as severe ptosis. Okay? So over here, this is moderate ptosis on the left eye. This can come in your toxin station, this picture. Again over here, you can see that the left eyelid in this child, in this particular child, you can see that this is covering more than 1 millimeter of the left eye. So it is also about moderate ptosis. It's not covering the pupil. Okay, the pupil is still spared. But there is one more thing that you have to see over in this picture. That can you see this crease? In the right eye, you can see a marginal crease. You can see a marginal or the upper lid crease. We call it upper lid crease. Okay. Similar type of upper lid crease is not present in the left eye. So the absence of upper eyelid crease is a typical sign of congenital ptosis. Okay. The absence of upper eyelid crease is a typical sign of congenital ptosis, and it indicates a reduced levator function. Okay? It indicates a reduced levator function. Okay, Marcus-Gunn jaw winking phenomena, I already told you that actually there is nothing but there is misfiring, there is misconnection in between the nerve supply to the pterygoid muscle and nerve supply to the levator of the eye. So both of them moves conjointly. So if a child comes to you with ptosis, you have to check, you have to ask the child to open and close the mouth so that you can rule out Marcus-Gunn jaw winking phenomena. And this is very simple. Over here in this picture, you can see that the over here, when the child opens the mouth, there is no ptosis. There is no ptosis. When he opens the mouth, because the nerve supply to the pterygoid muscle is connected to the nerve supply to the levator. So whenever this nerve is stimulated, the nerve to the levator also gets stimulated, and therefore the eye opens. In the other second picture, you can see the pterygoids are not working, the mouth is closed, and therefore the upper eyelid has also drooped in the left hand. So over here, there is no stimulation of the nerve supply to the third, to the levator, and no excitement of the nerve supply towards the pterygoid muscle. So whenever you see this type of sign, you just have to mark it, Marcus-Gunn's jaw winking phenomena. Okay. This is all about ptosis topic. If you have any question regarding it, because more than this, there's a lot to discuss about in the ptosis, but that will not come in your curriculum, that is the postgraduate curriculum. If you have any question regarding the ptosis, you can ask me now.
सर आपने जो लिवेटर मसल की चेकिंग बताई थी वो क्लियर नहीं हुई.
अच्छा, लेवेटर मसल की चेकिंग जो हम करते हैं, दैट इज कॉल्ड द अपर लिड एक्सकर्शन. ठीक है. इन अपर लिड एक्सकर्शन
वाला भी रिपीट कर दें.
जी, इन अपर लिड एक्सकर्शन, ये स्क्रीन पे इस वक्त आपके सामने है. अपर लिड एक्सकर्शन में सबसे पहले आप क्या काम करें, अपना थंब जो है वो पेशेंट के आईब्रो पे रखें. ठीक है. और उसको थोड़ा प्रेस करें, उसको प्रेस करें, बिकॉज फ्रंटालिस मसल का एक्शन आप उसको सेपरेट करना चाहते हैं. ठीक है. तो आपने उसको प्रेस किया. अब आप पेशेंट को कहें कि बिल्कुल नीचे देखो. When the patient looks extreme down, keep the zero of your scale on the center of the upper eyelid margin. आपने अपना स्केल का जो जीरो मार्क है उसको अपर आईलिड मार्जिन के सेंटर पे रख दिया. ठीक है जी. अब नेक्स्ट स्टेप क्या है, ask the patient to look up. Extreme up gaze. Extreme up gaze. And now observe the new position of the upper eyelid, center of the upper eyelid. Okay. Now your zero is still on the older position, earlier position. Your zero is on
Yes,
the
sir.
earlier position. When the eyelid will go up, the center of the eyelid marks the new position. That will be about 15 to 18 millimeter on your screen. So this will give you a power supply or the power of the levator function, that how much is it functioning. If the ptosis is due to levator failure, then the upper lid excursion will be reduced. Okay, the upper lid levator function will be reduced, and this upper lid excursion, instead of 15 to 18 millimeter, this might be 10 millimeter or 12 millimeter, but it will be lesser than this reading. Okay. So this is how we check the upper lid excursion. Any other question?
सर मायस्थीनिया में कैसे टॉपिक को डिटेक्ट
अच्छा,
करेंगे?
माइस्थेनिया में मैंने आपको दो टेस्ट बताए, वेरी सिंपल टेस्ट. नंबर वन इज फैटिगेबिलिटी टेस्ट. फैटिगेबिलिटी टेस्ट में आप क्या करेंगे, जस्ट मेजर the degree of ptosis in the primary gaze when the patient is looking straight, okay, and then ask the patient to look up for 5 minutes. उसको कहें कि अब आप छत की तरफ देखो 5 मिनट के लिए, and then measure the degree of ptosis after 5 minutes. Okay? उसके 5 मिनट के बाद आप उसकी जो है नई पोजीशन आप देखें उसकी अपर आईलिड की, सेंटर ऑफ द अपर आईलिड. इफ द ptosis increases, it means the patient have fatigue. माइस्थेनिया में यही प्रॉब्लम होता है ना कि फैटिगेबिलिटी हो जाती है. इसमें भी अपर आईलिड की फैटिगेबिलिटी हो जाएगी. आपने उसको बहुत ज़्यादा यूज़ करवाया है लेवेटर को, तो अब वो फैटिग हो गई है 5 मिनट के बाद, और अब उसका टोसिस बढ़ जाएगा. द टोसिस विल इंक्रीज. दिस इज द फैटिगेबिलिटी टेस्ट. और दूसरा है आइस टेस्ट. इन आइस टेस्ट what happens that you keep the ice pack onto the upper eyelid and keep it there for 5 minutes and then observe the degree of ptosis. If the ptosis has reduced, if the ptosis reduces, this confirms your myasthenia gravis diagnosis. If the ptosis have no change, it means it's not myasthenia gravis, because cooling effect directly goes to the neuromuscular junction and augments its function. That's why the neuromuscular function will increase. Okay?
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Any other question?
Yes, sir. I want to ask, sir, there are the different surgical techniques written in our textbook in the treatment of the ptosis. Sir, तो हम उनको मतलब कि read करें या नहीं करें, because there are only the names written there. तो सर वो सर्जिकल जो टेक्निक्स हैं वो समझ नहीं आ रही हमें.
जी जी, उसमें ये है कि the surgical techniques are basically 3. One is tarsal plate resection, the other is levator palpebrae resection, and the third
Yes,
one
sir.
is the frontalis bow suspension. Okay, frontalis bow suspension. These are the 3 surgical techniques. If the patient is having mild to moderate ptosis, we go for the tarsal plate resection or the levator resection. Okay? If the patient is having severe ptosis, we directly move for the frontalis bow suspension. Frontalis bow suspension. ठीक है? तो उसमें ये है कि there is an another, this for the surgical treatment, there is an another treatment क्योंकि हम ट्रांजिएंट किसी को अगर ptosis होता है, फॉर एग्जांपल थर्ड नर्व पैल्सी की वजह से हो रहा है, और थर्ड नर्व पैल्सी यू नो इज रिकवरेबल, तो 3-4 महीने में वो रिकवरी हो जाती है. तो उसके लिए हम क्या करते हैं कि वी गिव glasses to the patient which have crutches which keep the eyelid open, so that will keep the patient functional for 3 months. ठीक है, तो उस वजह से हम उसको ट्रांजिएंटली भी ट्रीट करते हैं. whenever we confirm that the ptosis is permanent, then we go for surgery. Otherwise we don't go for surgery, and we will not ask you for the steps of surgery. You just keep in your mind the name of surgeries that are done for the ptosis and the indication, okay, that I just told you. Any other question?
सर
जी
सर ये जो मॉडरेट और जो सीवियर डोसेस है उसकी डिग्री में हम कैसे मालूम करेंगे?
मैंने आपको अभी बताया था that in mild doses one have measurement of about 2 to 3 millimeter. In moderate doses 3 to 5 millimeter, and in severe doses more than 5 millimeter. So these are the degrees depending upon the measurement scale.
Sir,
जी
sir, will we get the recorded version of this lecture?
I have to ask these guys over here, the persons who are here.
अगर हो सके तो हमारे ग्रुप पे सेंड कर दीजिएगा प्लीज.
एक सेकंड होल्ड करो तो मैं ये इनसे मालूम करके आपको बताता हूँ. ये कह रहे हैं कि ये जो अभी मैंने लेक्चर दिया है
जी जी
ये उनको ऑडियो इसकी जो है वो जा सकती है, मतलब रिकॉर्डेड.
हाँ, वो रखेंगे यूट्यूब चैनल में.
वो
यूट्यूब चैनल पे रखेंगे.
ये अब मेरा रिकॉर्ड हो गया है
हाँ सारा रिकॉर्ड
यूट्यूब चैनल.
वो अभी रिकॉर्ड
Okay,
हो
sir.
गया है, रात को रखेंगे यूट्यूब.
ठीक. तो ये कह रहे हैं कि
ठीक है, sir.
आज शाम में या रात में जो है ये इसको यूट्यूब चैनल आपका जो है उस पर
Okay,
sir,
okay,
I
sir.
want to, sir,
जी जी
sir, I want to ask one more question.
yes.
Sir, can you differentiate between the true-tosis and the pseudotosis?
Yes, it is very easy to differentiate the true doses from the pseudo doses. If you know
Yes, sir. How?
if you know the cause of the ptosis. Okay, for example, if a patient is having anophthalmos in one eye, anophthalmos means small eyeball, okay, or the eyeball which has been shrunken or which have gone into the socket. So there is no support for the eyelid. So when there is no support for the eyelid, so it will droop down, and that is a ptosis which is pseudo. That's not actually any problem in the eyelid. It is the problem in the eyeball. So that will not be a ptosis, that will be a pseudotosis. On the other hand, if a patient is having a lid retraction in one eye, he will have ptosis on the other eye. As in thyroid eye disease, exophthalmos, the patient's eyeball will come out and there will be lid retraction. You can easily judge the problem in the eye. Pseudotosis is always in the normal eye. True ptosis is always in the abnormal eye. Okay, and pseudotosis is always compensatory. If the eyelid retracts, the one eyelid retracts, the other eyelid will compensatory droop. So that is a pseudotosis.
Okay, sir. I got it.
Sir, when will be your
सर
next
आइस
class?
का क्या रिलेशन है, मतलब रिलैक्स मसल को कैसे कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मतलब करवाता है? न्यूरोमस्कुलर जंक्शन पे आइस का मतलब समझ नहीं आया कि माइस्थेनिया की ट्रीटमेंट ये कैसे हो रही है.
एक्चुअली देखें ना भाई, लिवेटर पाल्पेब्री सुपेरियोरिस जो है इसकी नर्व सप्लाई, व्हाट इज द नर्व सप्लाई ऑफ लिवेटर? इज थर्ड नर्व. Okay, now from the nerve up to the muscle there is no direct connection. There is the neuromuscular junction in between the nerve and the muscle, and that neuromuscular junction, you all know that it is the action potential which travels through the nerve, and it is the muscular contraction that travels in the muscle. So it's not the action potential that travels in the muscle, it's the action potential in the nerve that travels. So this action potential, electrical energy have to be converted into the mechanical energy at the junction of neuromuscle, that is the neuromuscular junction. And the myasthenia gravis is a disease of neuromuscular junction. So this will disrupt the transmission of the message toward the muscle, and therefore whenever there is problem in neuromuscular junction, the levator will not function. Okay.
Sir, hello. जी सर, माइस्थेनिया में आपने दो टेस्ट बताए, द आइस पैक एंड द फटीगेबिलिटी टेस्ट. Sir, is there any importance of the tensilon test in the myasthenia gravis?
Tensilon test जो है ना, we do it in the ICU. Okay. We don't do it in the OPD or in the normal routine. In what happens that you have to inject physostigmine into the patient's blood, directly into the vein. That is actually a parasymptomatic drug. So it have different side effects. Parasympatholytic drug. So it is a different side effects, and it will, create tachycardia and different. It will affect the respiratory system. So we have to monitorize the patient and then do the tensilon test. We don't have to do the tensilon test in the OPD section.
Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Sir,
जी
hello.
जी जी
Sir, can you please explain that how the neurological cause can be the Horner syndrome?
Horner syndrome basically a problem with the sympathetic system. Whenever there is problem in the sympathetic supply, it will disrupt the Muller function, and Muller have a part to play in elevating the upper eyelid. That is why the doses in case of Horner syndrome is always mild, because Muller doesn't play a major role. It's the levator which plays the major role. So sympathetic supply, whenever there is disruption, it will affect the Muller muscle, and Muller muscle will in turn reduce the will lead to the doses. Okay?
Sir, in ptosis condition, how much upper eyelid covers the cornea, 2 or 1 millimeter?
1 to 2 millimeter. It is said that it is 1 to 2 millimeter.
Sir, Merkins and gun-jar winking ptosis is always occur in the child or can occur in any age group?
Marcus-Gunn jaw winking phenomena is a hereditary congenital disorder, and it always present in children. Whenever any children with ptosis comes to you, you have to examine and you have to do this test.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
मैडम एंट्रेंस
हाँ बस ये लेक्चर खत्म किया
खाली
हमारे
है
क्वेश्चन आए थे है ना